inspired to gather the next generation of curious investors, entrepreneurs, and tech leaders to spark conversations around the topics they are passionate about, from building a business to raising money to the challenges and triumphs of being an African entrepreneur on the continent or in the diaspora in today's world. Today we have Steven Freidmutter, the CEO of SF Ventures, a company that invests in tech-enabled businesses. He is an investor who is passionate about the African tech ecosystem and an entrepreneur with experience in spanning up to 40 years. I think Steven might be able to give a better introduction about himself. Steven, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Eunice. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, definitely. So, Steven, I did give a very brief introduction. We've met before in person. I've had firsthand the opportunity to see how passionate you are about just the African ecosystem as a whole. But I think it would be best if you gave an introduction of just yourself as a person, how you became involved with the African ecosystem, and what you're doing at SF Ventures.
Sure. I'll start out. I use SS Ventures as sort of an umbrella of all the things that I do. So for all the different investments and business things and involvements. So that's sort of my SF Ventures encompasses all of them. It's interesting that my focus is clearly on investing in early stage African tech companies. And to describe myself a little bit, I guess I know on LinkedIn, I say, I am an investor, advisor, mentor, and friend. And, one of the things is Africa is the youngest place on the planet. So I'm a 67-year-old man with a lot of experience in business. And I started out investing in women-founded companies as a venture capitalist in two funds, one called Chloe Capital and one called Astia Angels. From there, I met my first African founder, and I just had this feeling that I was meant to get behind him, her, them. It was a team, and that sort of opened up a lot of things. So that was about 3 years ago. So in that time, I've then become a partner in Launch Africa Ventures, based in Cape Town, which we are the most active early stage investor in Africa. So I ended up, from this one investment that I made, meeting my co-investors and then becoming part of a fund that we are invested in over 100 startups in over 20 countries. And Zachariah George is the managing partner of that. So I have a combination of individual investments that I've made from people that I meet, and a part of these funds that I had mentioned. Since I saw you, Eunice, Eunice and I actually had coffee together in Austin
Yes.
about a month ago, which was great. We ended up spending 3 hours together. And when we wrote about it, we got 27,000 people read our little article about on LinkedIn about our coffee meeting. So it's, I'll stop. I'll let you ask. I don't know if you want to ask a few more questions, or I could keep talking. But
no, definitely. I think your introduction was beautifully put together. I think I learned about you as well, just because of all the involvement you've been just across the African tech ecosystem as a whole. So I know your journey really started, just wanting to invest in women, right, and minorities, if I may say. Actually, I'm curious, what was the thinking behind it? Like, what sparked your interest in, I really want to just help out, I really want to invest, not help, women and minorities. And eventually that led you to investing, and becoming very heavily involved in the African ecosystem. Can you just give us like a quick, backstory of how that got
Sure.
started?
Sure. It's it is all connected. So I guess I am a child of immigrants. I'm a first generation person in America. And, you know, let's see, because of my family's history that has been difficult, and that we've had to experience many of the same problems that many of my African people have, in terms of being from a certain tribe and it being the wrong tribe for where you're geographically. So I think it became clear to me that who I am, that I'm the son of David, I'm my father's son, and that my grandfather came here with nothing, and that so my role is to stand with people that don't get all the opportunities that wealthy people get, or privileged people get. So I guess I just got to a point in my life where I saw that that was like my purpose. That And then it becomes, how do you find that handful, since you can only you can't help everyone. And so how do you find the best and the brightest and the people you like the most, that you feel like you could have the most impact on being successful? And so
Yeah.
that's been sort of my journey. And so it started with like women founders more here in the US, and now it's pretty much 100% towards uh, the African ecosystem. And I want to make two announcements.
Okay.
Since I saw you last, and since I posted about you and I getting to know each other, I've had two invitations that I'm going to accept. That here we are, after this pandemic and everything. So I am going to be speaking about entrepreneurship and investing in Africa and investing in women. I've been invited to Kigali, Rwanda, and so I'll
Awesome.
be I'll be presenting at a 4-day arts festival. And so, the history of Rwanda and the history of my people are not that different, just a generation removed. And so I'm honored and humbled that I got invited to do that. And then I was invited from there to go to Nairobi to participate in the second India Africa um, entrepreneurship summit. So to get
Wow.
kind of like uh, a developing world Davos of Asian and African investors and entrepreneurs to all be in one place, so that we could all get to know each other, because they're uh, you know that's the future. And so it's
Yeah.
being hosted, it's being created by one of my investing partners, Baljinder Sharma, who's from Mauritius, which
Okay.
is right in between India and Africa. So, but the conference is going to be in Nairobi. So I'm hoping end of June, July, to be on the ground talking about these things in Africa.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much for the announcement. I guess since we are recording this at the beginning of June, I will make sure this podcast get released earlier so that if
Great.
there are any African founders or investors that might be interested in attending these two conferences and even meeting you, Steven, in person, at
Yes.
least they can get the chance to do that.
I was going to say any of over this time we spoke about it. You and I have been virtual,
Yeah.
reaching out on LinkedIn and WhatsApp and Zoom and everything, uh, podcasts. But these two things, it's very exciting. I'm looking forward to meeting many of the people that I have met over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
For us to be in person, have dinner together, share each other's stuff live and in person. So I'm looking forward to it, and that all happened since you and I met about a
Yeah.
month ago.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, let's get a little bit into the details. Stephen, I know you've invested in both tech companies as well as VC funds. So we could say you're technically like, I don't know, an angel investor and an LP to a sense. So I'm curious, just for the audience out there, I think, raising money is difficult. Fundraising, whether you're a startup founder or a fund manager, is a challenging task to do. And for our viewers today, I'll say, what do you look for in a tech startup, right, before making an investment? And I would like if you maybe say the same thing for a fund manager, given that you've made quite a few investment in VC funds as well.
Sure. I've obviously had conversations with hundreds of really both sides of
Yeah.
founders looking for investment and fund managers, raising funds. Um, okay. I'm gonna specialize to make it this information, worthwhile.
Yeah.
Speak about Africa. So the first thing is like, unlike the United States, let's say, in Africa, there's some such basic problems that need to be solved. So, like, the first thing is just like, is this something that, it's just a common sense thing? Like, I can't believe this is not digitized. People spend 3 hours waiting online and doing this and that and that. And this is a company that's going to, whatever, take out the cost, take out the time, make it easier, make it more efficient. Um, so first, it's just the idea of like, I feel as a human being, like, my thing is like, there's so many things in Africa that need to get done that, to
Yeah.
try to choose ones that mean something to me and that I think have impact on, and then of course, from a business side, then that goes to something that will have an impact on a lot of people. So
Mhm.
something that, it's not just this little idea that's a great idea and you'll be successful, but that once it's successful, we can then add it to the town next door and the country next door, and and whatever that means. And so I'm always looking for, an idea that, yeah, it's not just a small amount of people that need this. Everybody needs this. And once we do that in this other country, they need it too.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, so I think that's really different than in the U.S., where so many things have been done that it's kind of hard. It's a whole, as you and I, one of the things Eunice and I have in common is that we both, I think, know the scene here, like in Austin in the United States and in Africa, and they're just very
Yep.
different. So that's my first thing. The thing that's common in all of that, and I'm sure it's all about the people, because
Mhm.
once we figure out there's a million great ideas, then it's like, who do I trust? That it could be that they have a great team. It could be that they're very well connected in their field that the business is in. It could be that I just know that no matter what happens, they're not going to give up. And I've made enough investments. And I think you'd probably agree with me that it ends up like that's the number one thing. As much as people analyze business ideas, you go to MBA school and you know, it gets down to who is the founder and who do you believe in, because here's a part of it. In a startup, you
Yeah.
often have to shift gears, shift directions. You think it's this kind of thing, but your real customer is a different kind of person. And so you want to be with someone. And so that's where I'm going to pull together, from my background, I tend to I tend to invest in people that, I don't know if the word is self-made, but people that weren't born wealthy, that, that really I feel aren't going to squander the chance.
Yeah.
Here's $100,000. You know, you know, I want to be with someone that this is the chance of a lifetime, and no matter what, they're going to make this successful. And so I think both, and so yeah, and in a fund manager, same thing. You're looking for really somebody who is a maniac smart person, because and that I'll tell you my fun story when I met uh, Elisa Miller out of Chloe Capital, who was one of
Mhm.
the founders really of investing in women things, and I met her when we were both at Cornell University, and that's how I got into all this. I was working with their technology, uh, tech transfer, and all that. So she says to me, I'm starting a venture fund, Stephen. I'd like you to be one of my first investors. Um, I run my own tech company, but I'm kind of bored. I want to invest in 5 companies, in 10 companies, and I
Yeah.
want to be involved in all of them. And I said, so that's the kind of person you're looking for in the fund, who and in my Africa thing, Zachariah George is even more. We have 100 investments. And so just people who I just marvel. So here's something that goes for both what I in my founders and the fund managers, is that I'm 67 years old. I have a lot of experience and a lot to offer, but what
Mhm.
I don't have is what somebody 25 to 45 has, which is youth and energy. So I also know that it's my time to get behind other people and have them be the ones and just be there to, advise, help, support, invest in. Um, and here's a funny, because of the people I'm going to say one more thing and then I'll stop. And if you want to ask any more questions,
Yeah.
uh, this has to do with something you asked before. Um, it has to do with how I choose people, but I'm thinking more in terms of other investors, because the people I support have all been women or racial minorities or outsiders of one kind or another, gender, whatever your thing is, and that those are so. Uh, for better or worse, I found that I really have so much to add to each of those situations, because of who I am and my experience. I bring a certain confidence to the scenario so that they can be seen more how they really are,
Mhm.
instead of that they're a black woman or a young person or this. So whatever the thing is, whether it's youth, it's gender, or it's race, or geography, or religion, or whatever, or education, when I stand with them, it sort of just seems to be easier to raise money, or to to have people listen, at least to have them listen,
Yeah.
uh, with a more open mind, because as we've discussed, and the reason you and I are doing all this is, women and minorities get, like, less than 5% of the venture money, even though they're
Mhm.
50% of the ideas, brains, and bodies. So um, yeah, so I'll stop there.
Beautiful. No, that was beautiful. Thank you so much. I think like I asked one question and like you answered technically like so many of my other questions within like one answer. But yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned so many things, like some of the challenges, right, for either African entrepreneurs or fund managers. And really, those challenges are opportunities, right? Because the fact that we are both based in the US, we know that, a lot of the things that were created maybe 10 years ago in the US in terms of technology and digitalization, right? Like the African continent, and again, different countries, have different levels of
Yes,
advancement, right? But a
yes,
lot of them are just picking up, right? Like, so it's it's a beautiful thing to see for some of us that have been in the US for this long. But also, right, a lot of those challenges are opportunities for companies to be created, the opportunities for investments to be made. Which brings to my next question. We've all heard some of the biggest challenges for entrepreneurs in Africa today. Financing and capital being one of the biggest, right? Let's not get fooled by, we raised billions of dollars last year out of the whole continent when just Austin, Texas alone, which is a very small city in
Yeah.
Texas in the United States, right, raised, pretty much as like I think Austin, Texas alone raised about 5 billion in VC money last
Right.
year versus the whole continent of Africa raising 5 billion in VC money. So my question is, in your opinion, and we're both big advocates of investing in Africa, what do you think the ecosystem needs to do, right, to help improve capital being deployed on the continent and having more VC interest and VC money going into African startups? Like, in your opinion, what do you think the ecosystem needs to do?
Okay, so I think to start out with, to give a sentence of hope is how much more positive it is now
Yeah.
than it was like 3 years ago. Like I'm thinking, like when I first started making my investments in Africa and in female founded companies globally, the whole concept of both of those things was seemed so out there, and the
Hmm.
amounts of money were so minuscule. So I think your comparison of the VC money of Austin and all of Africa is amazing. But then, if we look at from 3 years ago to now, I think it's not as way out there. Excuse me, it's not as way out there anymore. So I think we're on a I think we're in a time where, like, now when I say it to people, instead of them saying you're crazy, or uh it's more curious, like, wow, you're investing in Africa and women,
Hmm.
that's interesting. It's more, people have heard of that now. So I think we found in the launch Africa, um the size of the fund ended up larger than anticipated, I think, for that reason. It's partly
Yeah.
okay. It's partly you know, uh, small picture, like the managers, people had trusted in Zach, who's the manager, but I think also our category became like, oh, maybe we should put our 2% of our wealth in this place, whereas
Yeah.
it wasn't on the table before. And over the years, there's always, like, certain investments become, if you want to diversify a little bit, you're not. I don't think people are thinking that people in the United States and Europe are going to take every cent they have and invest it in Europe, but I mean in Africa. But I think that the idea that looking at a five, okay, so, and here's something that I think is important that you and I, probably agree on. When I'm doing this, unlike certain other things you might invest in the stock market or whatever, I'm looking at a 5 year time horizon to judge
Hmm.
what happened,
Yeah.
because we're such early stage things, that this is that I think for people to say, I'm going to take very small percentage if you are an investor, and I'm going to choose Africa because it might have a more positive trajectory than population centers like the U.S., Japan, Europe, that are aging. And of course, the consumer market. When you look at how many young people are in Africa, it really just gets down to, as what we're doing creates people with a standard of living that can buy more things, then it's just going to keep growing on itself, of people both starting of more people starting companies, and people having more purchasing power. whether that's
Awesome.
construct, consumer goods, construction, vacation, travel, all kinds of stuff. So I think,
Yeah.
so that's what I think. I think it's still such an exotic part of an investment that when you say it to people, I mean, I don't know anybody else doing what I'm doing here. But like you and I have joked that Eunice and I have joked that our tagline is Austin African VCs, because it's the two of
Mhm.
us are the Austin African VCs. Yeah,
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well, Steven, that was very well put together. And yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, right? Like, yeah, it's still very small compared to the amount of money that is going into other countries or continents. But we're just getting started. We're way far along than we were 3 or 2 or even 1 year ago.
yeah.
And we're just getting started. So the whole point of this podcast is to talk about living your African dream. And I'm a big advocate of, you're not African because you were born on the continent. You're African because Africa somehow find its way to be born within you. So I have one last question to ask you, Stephen. In a very simple way put together, like what is your African dream? Like what are your hopes for the continent?
Wow, that's a great question. First I'll just say because of the pandemic, it's been a dream put off because it was hard to travel and all that with the pandemic. But I do have African dream, and so I'm going to share something with you that I've never shared publicly before. So we might as well do it now. Um,
Awesome.
okay, so when my father was dying, he sadly, my father died when I was finishing college. So I was 22, 1977, and I took care of my dad. So I took care of my dad as he was leaving this place, and it was really sad. And we spent a lot of he then went into like a coma and came back, and right before he left. We spent some time, and he started speaking in a language that I didn't understand what it was. And he just kept saying to me, um, we were wandering through the desert. I'm so thirsty. And it was like, um, it had this connection to Africa, that my family has an African connection thousands of years ago, and I don't know where or what, but I had this glimpse with my dad where he spoke a language I never heard before, and he sure looked like he was walking through the desert, trying to find the next spot. So you know that was like over 40 years ago, and I didn't and then so in the last few years I sort of have been getting these invitations to come to Africa. So it's the unlikeliest thing that somebody from Ithaca, New York would feel this pull, but in actuality it's not a totally random thing. And the people I've met, and when they welcome me, they don't feel like total strangers either, even though um, if even though we've been separated for a couple of thousand years. But
Yeah.
so
Wow.
anyway, I hope that's okay. That's actually I've always wondered when I was going to say that, because you know that's a big thing for me. My dad, and this coming to Africa feels like it's there's a connection.
That's beautiful. That was beautifully put, Stephen. And thank you so much for sharing that with me and hopefully with all the viewers of this podcast. It was such a pleasure speaking with you. I've enjoyed every single conversation we've had in the last couple of weeks, really, since we've met. I think, we are just getting started. There's so much opportunity for you on the continent. You've been heavily involved, and you're just at the peak. We're just getting started for your journey into not just the African tech ecosystem, but also as a mentor, as an advisor, and as a friend. Well, Stephen, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure hosting you on Live the African Dream podcast. And hope to have you again, hopefully sometime soon in the future.
Yes, that's totally my pleasure. And the last thing I was going to say is to confirm that I will be having a satellite home in Austin in October. So we'll be seeing each other more in October when I'm in Austin night as well.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Okay, you too, Eunice. Thanks. This was great.